we should talk. Originally, I didn't plan on making any other videos on the topic of Blaseball. Don't get me wrong, I still absolutely adore the game and follow it very closely. Plus, the reception to my last video was absolutely amazing. But short of making periodic update videos about the various seasonal happenings, I thought I really said everything I needed to about the game, the community, and why I think they're special. I was wrong! Apparently, we are just absolutely out of control, and over the last few weeks, something happened. Okay, a few things. Many things happened. If y'all want to peek behind the curtain, this is actually like my 4th time trying to record this video. I mean, every time I like sit down and start scripting, like there was another event, and tracing the through line of all of this was a endeavor. I felt compelled to make another video because the magnitude of what happened is truly wild, and I think we all need to come together and really break this down and unpack what we did. If this is your first introduction to Blaseball, I'm going to highly recommend you go back and watch my first video on it. I'm not going to really spend any time talking about the rules or go into detail about how the game works, so if you're new, absolutely none of this is going to make sense to you. Previously, we left off at the end of Season 3. Blaseball had achieved sudden viral success and was going on a 2-week siesta to deal with the massive influx of new participants. As I mentioned, a lot has happened since then. So much has happened that a lot of it doesn't really have anything to do with the thesis of today's video. It's not that many of these things aren't important to Blaseball, it's really just that they don't tie into the main topics I want to talk about today so far. I say so far because Blaseball moves very quickly, and there's a good chance that I'll be eating those words in like 2 weeks. If you do want to learn more about the things that I don't cover today, I highly recommend going to the wiki and checking out their seasonal summaries. They're very thorough and detailed, and they should be able to help fill in the gaps that I don't talk about. With that said, this is going to be a bit different than my last video in that I'm not going to walk through each season event by event. I'm really going to focus on a specific series of events, how they evolved and impacted each other, and their impact on the game and us. I guess you could think about this video like a Blaseball story time. That's a thing, right? That's a thing. Storytime? That's a YouTube thing. Y'all, I'm not kidding. There's a lot that's happened since Season 3. I mean, you can go and learn about the Blagon Balls if you want. You know, they're a lot like the Dragon Balls from that one anime Big Monkey Punch-a-Man, except, you know, with blood. Oh yeah, you can also go learn about the Blood Tub and Blood Drain. Blood Rain? Blood Rain. Blood Drain. Blood Drain, sure. If you'll remember, one of the decrees enacted at the end of Season 3 was interviews. On the surface, this didn't seem too crazy. I mean, it's kinda normal, sort of. I mean, this is Blaseball we're talking about here. The interviews decree made it so that you could get to know the players. You could click on their name on the website and it would give you little tidbits such as their preferred coffee style, their pre-game rituals, or their soul screams. Sure. Just a bit of fun extra tidbits about the players to help bring the game to life and help the participants with their lore writing. During the 2-week siesta between Seasons 3 and 4, a new seemingly Blaseball affiliated Twitter account called The Microphone popped up. The account was followed by the commissioner, who was always doing a great job, so participants rightly assumed that this must be the microphone that the interview's decree was referring to. During the siesta, the microphone began tweeting some unusual, cryptic things that might suggest it was sentient in some way or form. A lot of these were really innocuous comments that were devoid of any real meaning. Until the opening day of Season 4. On the first day of Season 4, participants noted a new weather condition called feedback on the virtual diamonds. Then, 4 hours into the season, during a match between the Chicago Firefighters and the Dallas Stakes, it happened. Without warning, Paula Mason and Thomas Kirby switched teams. This, understandably, shocked and confused the participants. Up until now, the only times that players had switched teams were when certain blessings were enacted and players were stolen or traded away. Participants could target certain players or positions that they wanted to move, giving them some form of roundabout control over their teams. With feedback, that control no longer seemed quite as absolute. As a direct result of enacting the interviews decree, feedback swept through the league, and there were 11 counts of players swapping teams. In Season 5, feedback evolved into another weather condition called reverb. Whenever games are played in reverb weather, there's a high chance that one of the teams playing will have their roster shuffled. Effects could be as minor as just the batting and pitching order being changed, or pitchers could become batters and vice versa. So out of all the things that have happened since season 3, why did I decide to put a lens on this one decree in this particular series of events? To me, the interviews decree was a symptom of a pattern that was starting to form within Blaseball and affected everything else that happened between seasons 4 and 8. As it was written on the ballot, the interviews decree only talks about how we can get to know the players. As we can see, after it was enacted, a lot of other things were tied to it. Interviews led to feedback, which led to reverb. You can also see examples of this from when we opened the Forbidden Book and enacted the Peanuts Decree, which we will talk about in a bit. What I'm saying here is that decrees always seem to come with an unstated condition or cost. But whenever there is a decree up for voting that seemingly advances the story or adds more lore to the world, participants seem to vote for these en masse. Oftentimes it seems like we don't really consider this cost and how it could impact us or the game at large, and end up surprised when these things happen. Season 6 introduced a new idol mechanic. The way this works is anytime during a season, a participant may select any player from the ILB, regardless of who their favorite team is, and select them to be their idol. Mechanically, idols are just another potential source of income for the participants. After purchasing certain items from the Blaseball shop, idols can generate coins for every hit, home run, strikeout, and shutout they're involved in. The 20 players that were idolized the most were placed upon the idol leaderboard, which tracked their rankings in real time. The leaderboard also had this ominous red line that segregated the top 3 players from everyone else, and oh god, it's back. Hey, you remember my good friend and yours, the Peanut? Well, shortly before the start of season 6, he came back, this time with an ominous, maybe slightly threatening message. Before we start unpacking this, I'd like to rewind a little bit and talk about a couple things. In my last video, we talked about 2 major events during the early days of Blaseball, opening the Forbidden Book and the Peanut Fraud. These were considered to be acts of blasphemy against the Blaseball gods, strikes 1 and 2 against the participants. One thing to note is that when the Forbidden Book was opened, there were a lot of sections that were redacted and unable to be read. At the beginning of season 3, previously redacted sections of the book began to reveal themselves. Article 5E made reference to atonement and 1 million peanuts, but sections were still redacted, so we didn't have the full context at the time. However, after the Peanut Fraud, this text was revealed and subsequently struck from the Forbidden Book. The participants then realized that not only was the Peanut Fraud an act of blasphemy, they'd also just lost their one path to atonement. But with the new idol mechanic and the mysterious message from the Peanut at the top of the season, some participants thought that they now had a unique opportunity to make amends and also avoid a potential strike 3. You see, after the Peanuts decree from season 2 was enacted, 3 players from the league underwent a mysterious transformation. Dan Holloway, Daniel Duffy, and Dan Bong all had their names changed to Peanut Duffy, Peanuteel Holloway, and Peanut Bong. This didn't have any change on their stats or really any other noticeable impact, but these names remained for seasons after. These players went on to be known as the 3 Peanuts. At this point of season 6, a plan started to come together. A faction within the community was formed around the idea of peanut idolatry, which is a real phrase that I never thought I would have to say with my human mouth, but here we are. This faction of participants believed that our past transgressions could be forgiven if we elevated the 3 Peanuts above the red line on the leaderboard. Okay, so hold that thought for now. While peanut idolatry began to thrive and spread through the community, another darker faction was starting to form. On Tuesday, September 8th, a ghost from the past emerged and Jalen Hotdog Fingers appeared on the idol leaderboard. Yes, that Jalen Hotdog Fingers I yelled about being dead in my last video. It turns out when players are incinerated, their player data is still maintained on the Blaseball website. Once some participants found that Jalen's player card was still functionally identical to that of any other living player, it was easy enough to idolize them. It also just so happens that during season 6, there was a interesting blessing available to be voted on. This blessing was a lottery pick, which allowed a team to steal the 14th most idolized player in the league. So at this point, the question on everybody's mind was, what if that player's dead? Consequences be damned, this faction of the community just thought they found the secret to necromancy. Part of this group was just blinded by their own curiosity and wanted to see, hey, would it happen? The other part of this group saw it as a deliberate, direct act of defiance against the Blaseball gods themselves. By the end of season 6, 58 players had been struck down and incinerated in the line of duty by the rogue umpires. 20 players had swapped teams due to instances of feedback. Many of these players were beloved fan favorites favorites that were either gone or no longer part of their original teams. While the Peanut Idolaters sought to appease the Blaseball gods and wipe away the mistakes of the past, these Resurrectionists wanted to prove that they were not beholden to the laws of a higher power and force an end to the discipline era. Over the course of the week, the Idol leaderboard was a frantic mess. Players were constantly shifting positions as these two factions were at war with one another, trying to accomplish their very different goals. At the conclusion of Season 6, the 3 players at the top of the Idol leaderboard were Jessica Telephone, Nagami McDaniel, and Peanut Bong. Peanut Idolatry had failed. Yeah, so this absolutely led to Strike 3, but apparently the old 4th strike decree applies to we the participants as well, meaning we still had one more shot to make things right. Certainly we're not going to mess up again, right? You'll also note that Telephone and McDaniel had Shelled slapped over their names. Well, that's because canonically, they were now encased in giant peanut shells for being above the red line and not peanut players. You know, just like normal baseball. This meant that Telephone and McDaniel were completely unable to bat or pitch while they were encased in their shells. Okay. So, I know what you're thinking. Hey Josh, that's all well and good, but what about that absolutely insane necromancy thing you were talking about? Yeah, that happened. While Peanut Idolatry failed when only one of the 3 peanuts was able to ascend above the red line, somehow Jalen held strong at the 14th position on the leaderboard. And on Sunday, September 13th, Jalen Hotdog Fingers returned from the void and rejoined the Seattle garages. I would like to take a moment to point out how absolutely amazing this was. During Season 6, over 288,000 votes were cast. While this doesn't take into account people voting multiple times, it does give us an idea of how active the community was at that time. The fact that Jalen was able to remain within 1 or 2 places of the 14th spot for almost the entire season, ultimately landing at number 14, was truly an amazing feat of persistence, coordination, and organization. Oh yeah, and then this happened. Should be fine. 5 hours into Season 7, Jalen Hotdog Fingers pitched her first game since returning from the void. During this game, for the first time in ILB history, a player was beamed by a pitch. This was not a one-time event, and Jalen went on to hit many more players throughout Season 7. At first, all this did was add a new unstable status to the players that were hit, which seemingly did nothing. And then came Ruby Tuesday. On Tuesday, September 15th, Jalen hit 3 bats people during a game against the Hades Tigers. Shortly thereafter, one of those 3 players was incinerated by the rogue umpires, and a brand new message played in the game log. So not only are we dealing with the tragedy of a player being incinerated, now there's talks of a debt needing to be collected. Not only that, the instability that Jalen was causing other players was now spreading. Turns out, when you have the unstable status effect, if you play a game during a solar eclipse, you are significantly more likely to be incinerated. Being incinerated while unstable passes that instability to another player currently in the match. So what this all means is that yes, we succeeded in bringing Jalen back. We found the secret of necromancy, but at what cost? Jalen returned from the void an absolutely brutal, mean bean machine. I'd also like to give a big shout out to the person that runs Jalen's Twitter page, because it's suggested that Jalen had zero control over this. They did not want to do this. They have no control over their actions, but they must bean. They have to bean. To add insult to injury, every time an unstable player was incinerated, the commissioner, who was always doing a great job, cannot stress that enough, would tweet out these cryptic messages talking about the debt, leaving all of us to wonder, when will that debt finally be repaid? And we were just left to wonder and watch in horror at what Jalen had become. At this point, the community was aghast, shocked, and horrified at what we had created. Our hubris had created a monster. We didn't want this and we didn't ask for this, but we got it because it's another example of us tampering with forces and powers that we don't really understand. Like I said earlier in this video, everything we do in Blaseball has a consequence. There's always a hidden cost. We, the participants, thought we had found yet another way that we could twist the system to our advantage. The gods didn't deny us and were willing to fulfill that wish, but as the monkey paw curled, we were the ones left to deal with what happened. After days and days of agonizing player losses, all we could really do was watch and reflect on our actions. The community came together. We were driven to move forward. We learned that power is a very dangerous thing, and we could not be tempted by that power into defying the gods again. That's a lie. That's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. We learned nothing. Before Season 7 even started, fans of the Unlimited Tacos came together and went, hey, wouldn't it be crazy if we didn't have any pitchers? Season 7 expanded the Idol leaderboard where the red line eclipsed the top 10 players instead of just the top 3. Now remember, just one season prior to this, we learned that any non-peanut player over the red line would become shelled. Thus, the Snackrifice plan was born. You see, every Blaseball team lineup has 10 players playing in a game. 5 batters, 5 pitchers. What this means is that now it was feasibly possible for an entire team to become shelled by the end of the season. Fans of the Tacos took it upon themselves to test this theory. In their words, who better but us? Fans of the Tacos reached out to fans of all other team affiliations across the ILB to idolize each and every one of their pitchers. They focused on their pitchers because the odds of getting all 10 of their players into the shelled status were astronomically low. However, getting only 5 in was a much more attainable goal. So while their whole team wouldn't be shelled, they could still effectively eliminate an entire position from theirs. This would absolutely cripple their team. It would completely, utterly, and intentionally disrupt the entire game of Blaseball. How would the game even function if a team had no pitchers? It was another amazing act of fan unity because they pulled it off. After a long week of campaigning, by the end of the season, each and every one of the Tacos' 5 pitchers ascended above the red line, and at the end of the season, they were shelled. This was a massive success, some might consider. Our friend the Peanut seemed to disagree. Coincidentally, the fans were also able to successfully get the 3 peanuts above the red line, achieving peanut idolatry. To this, the Peanut was much more overjoyed. Have you ever seen such talent? While the Peanut seemed to disagree with our show of unity during the Snackrifice, it greatly approved of our peanut idolatry. As a reward for idolizing its children, the Peanut granted every single participant 10,000 peanuts. Oh yeah, and then this friend showed up after that. I'm gonna be real honest, I have no idea what to say about this friend. We've been calling them the Monitor. They seem to think peanuts are eggs and they really want to eat them. I think they follow Jalen from Hell, so, you know, that's cool. I think I might need to make a separate video about the whole Peanut Monitor subplot because in the wake of the Snackrifice, we saw exactly what happens when a team has no pitchers able to be fielded. They get a pitching machine, I guess. Pitching machine ended up being an absolutely insane, and please forgive the pun, pitching machine. A lot of participants started idolizing pitching machine because it was one of the best pitchers in the league at this point. Honestly, the Tacos got off pretty easy in the wake of the Snackrifice, but it ended up being another hilarious example of fan unity, and fortunately, the consequences for this one were not too dire. The last major thing I'd like to talk about today is the addition of the Hall of Flame during Season 8. The Hall of Flame listed every single player that had been incinerated in the line of duty from all seasons. Participants may view the Hall of Flame at any time and make offerings to these players in the form of peanuts. It isn't exactly known what these offerings do, but as it tends to happen with Blaseball, rumblings started on social media and in the Discord about what if we made enough offerings, could that potentially bring a player back to life? I mean, we did just get 10,000 peanuts each. This was an obvious test and we failed! Strike 4, we're done! Whenever we, the participants, receive the opportunity for something new in Blaseball, despite the fact that at this point we do know that everything has a cost. No matter what happens, no matter the consequences, we always opt for the path that avoids the status quo. If it seems like a way to game the system or break the rules, the fans will always band together to go for that option. Fans love this game, and they love the players, and they will do everything in their power to try and protect that. We never learn, but we are always shocked by the consequences of our actions. There's a beautiful innocence to it, really. This is just another beautiful example of the Blaseball community at work. We always roll with the punches, and we always find a new way to persevere. The community is persistent, the community is creative, and the community is ever hopeful, despite there being a lot of evidence saying we shouldn't be. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope y'all had fun with this Blaseball story time idea that I kind of had. I really wanted to go through and pick out some of the more major events and talk about how they connected with one another, and it was a lot of fun. If there are other chains of events within Blaseball that you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments, or hey, if there's something outside of the world of Blaseball you want to see me do a dumb video on, leave it in the comments too. I'm really excited that y'all have been enjoying the videos I've put out so far, and I'm excited to keep making more. I'd like to thank my friend Sean for helping me out with the editing of this video. Without him, this absolutely wasn't gonna happen because I have had technical snafu after technical snafu, and I was about to scrap it before he came in and saved the day. You can find him on Twitter at @itwassean. I've also linked that down below for you to find it. That's gonna do it for me today, everybody. Just remember, please rejoice and play ball.